"Don't move your hand, don't take advantage," she warned. Yet the rancher did the unthinkable. Birds chirped cheerfully, hopping from one tree to another, as if celebrating the start of a new day. The air was crisp and clean, carrying the faint scent of fresh grass and earth. In this peaceful setting, Maria moved quietly through the familiar landscape of her family's ranch. Returning here after years in the city had been a mix of comfort and unease. The ranch had always been her refuge, a place of freedom and nature, but she also remembered the responsibilities and hard work that came with it. Still, the feeling of being home, of belonging to this land, brought a sense of calm she hadn't felt in a long time. Maria had spent her early childhood running through these very fields, helping her parents with chores and learning the rhythm of life on a ranch. She remembered the long days of feeding animals, repairing fences, and tending to the vegetable garden. Every corner of the ranch held a memory, and now returning as an adult, she saw it with new eyes. The barns, the horse stables, and even the small wooden shed by the creek seemed more alive than ever. The animals recognized her instantly. The horses nickered softly as she approached, and the chickens clucked around her feet. On this particular morning, Maria was focused on organizing the feed. The large sacks of grain and hay were heavy, and the work was physically demanding, but she enjoyed the feeling of being productive and self-reliant. She moved with precision and care, stacking the sacks neatly, making sure nothing would fall or get damaged. The sun climbed higher, warming her face and hands, and she paused for a moment to take in the view. The field stretched endlessly, with patches of wildflowers swaying gently in the breeze. Everything felt still, yet alive, as if the ranch itself was breathing along with her. It was then that she noticed Jake approaching. He was a local rancher, well known in the community for his strength and confidence. Jake had a reputation for helping neighbors whenever they needed it, often going out of his way to assist. Today, he carried a calm, friendly smile, and in his hands he held a few tools as if he had come to lend a hand. Maria had seen him around before, helping with fence repairs or assisting others with their animals, and while most people appreciated his presence, she felt a small twinge of caution. There was something in the way he moved, a certain boldness in his step, that made her pause. "Good morning, Maria," Jake called out, his voice steady and warm. "I thought I'd come by and see if you needed help with these feed sacks. They're heavy, and I know you've got a lot to do." Maria looked at him carefully. She appreciated the offer, but she had learned to trust her instincts over the years. Small towns could be tricky, people could be kind and generous, but it was important to stay alert. She smiled politely and responded, "Thank you, Jake. I appreciate it, but I've got it under control. I'm used to handling these myself." Jake stepped closer, a friendly gesture in mind. "I insist," he said, reaching toward the sacks. That's when Maria felt a ripple of unease. Something about his manner seemed to overstep a little, though she didn't fully understand it yet. Taking a steady breath, she decided to set her boundaries clearly without causing a scene. "Don't move your hand, don't take advantage," she warned firmly, looking directly into his eyes. Her tone was calm but resolute, leaving no room for misunderstanding. For a brief moment, the air seemed to hold its breath. Jake paused, his smile faltering slightly as he recognized the seriousness in her voice. Maria could feel her heart rate quicken, not out of fear of the work itself, but because she understood the importance of asserting herself. In a world where boundaries could easily be overlooked, speaking up was her shield. She picked up a feed sack with practiced strength and carried it toward the storage area, ensuring her hands remained steady despite the tension in the air. As they worked, Jake shifted his approach. Instead of insisting, he stepped back and offered a respectful nod. Maria noticed this change and allowed herself a small, relieved smile. The work continued in silence for a while, broken only by the sounds of the animals and the occasional thud of sacks being stacked. Maria's movements were methodical, almost meditative, as she poured her focus into each task. Each swing of her arms, each lift and stack of feed, was a reminder of her independence and capability. The morning wore on, and Maria began to feel more at ease. She watched Jake from the corner of her eye as he assisted with the heavier tasks, maintaining a respectful distance. It was clear he was used to being in control, but today he had acknowledged her warning and held back. Maria reflected on the importance of this moment. Setting boundaries wasn't just about confrontation. It was about self-respect, clarity, and ensuring that others understood her limits. She realized that strength didn't always mean physical power. It also meant the courage to speak, to assert, and to stand firm. By late morning, the feed area was neatly organized, the sacks stacked securely, and the animals were calm and content. Maria wiped the sweat from her forehead, feeling a quiet sense of accomplishment. The sun had climbed high into the sky, casting bright rays over the fields, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves in the trees. The ranch felt alive with movement, yet at peace, as if acknowledging the careful balance she had maintained. As Jake prepared to leave, he gave a courteous nod and said, "You did well today, Maria. I respect how you handled everything." Maria nodded in return, sensing that this interaction had set the tone for their future encounters. She felt a mixture of relief and empowerment, knowing she had asserted herself without escalating tension. After Jake left, Maria took a moment to stand in the middle of the feed area and look around. The barns, the stables, and the open field stretched before her, bathed in sunlight. She felt a renewed connection to the ranch and to herself. Each animal she cared for, each task she completed, was a reminder that she could navigate the challenges of life with strength, awareness, and dignity. In the quiet that followed, Maria reflected on the lessons of the morning. She knew that rural life, while serene and beautiful, required constant mindfulness. Trust was earned, boundaries were vital, and courage came in many forms. She had begun her day with the simple task of organizing feed, yet it had become an exercise in awareness, self-respect, and vigilance. The events of the morning, though subtle, had left a lasting impact on her, reinforcing the principles she lived by. By the time the sun reached its peak, Maria had completed her morning chores. She paused to drink from a water jug, leaning against the wooden fence. The gentle sounds of the ranch, the low whinny of a horse, the rustling of leaves, and the distant calls of birds created a comforting rhythm. It reminded her that life on the ranch was a mix of hard work, beauty, and careful attention to one's surroundings. As she looked out over the fields, Maria felt a sense of readiness for whatever challenges the day might bring. She knew that maintaining her independence, protecting her boundaries, and trusting her instincts were essential not just for herself, but for the harmony of the ranch and the well-being of everyone around her. The morning had been more than a simple start to the day. It had been a test of her resolve, her judgment, and her courage. With renewed determination, Maria began her next task, confident in her ability to face the world on her own terms. The ranch, with its rolling hills, friendly animals, and warm sunlight, was more than a place. It was a sanctuary where strength, respect, and self-awareness could flourish. And Maria, standing strong amidst the beauty and challenges of her home, knew that she was ready for whatever lay ahead. The days following that morning on the ranch began quietly, almost peacefully, but Maria could sense a subtle shift in the air. Life on the ranch was always full of routine, feeding the animals, mending fences, and tending the gardens. But now, each task carried a layer of awareness she hadn't needed before. She moved through her chores carefully, keeping an eye out for anything unusual, and always making sure she wasn't alone when handling heavier work. Her encounter with Jake had reminded her that even familiar places could hold unexpected challenges, and she wanted to be prepared for anything. At first, it seemed like Jake had respected her warning. He offered to help only when asked and maintained a careful distance. But over time, Maria began noticing small behaviors that made her uneasy. Jake's presence was becoming more frequent around the ranch, and he often appeared at times when she was alone. Sometimes she would see him in the distance, working on his own land or walking along the edge of the fields, and he would glance in her direction as if testing whether she was paying attention. Maria told herself not to overthink it. After all, Jake was a neighbor, and he had always been helpful in the past. Perhaps she was imagining things. Still, Maria couldn't ignore the instinct in her gut that warned her to stay alert. She began discussing the situation with a trusted friend in town, someone who had known her family for years and understood the dynamics of rural life. Sitting in the small kitchen of her friend's home, Maria described Jake's behavior carefully, avoiding assumptions but emphasizing her discomfort. "He's always been helpful before," she said, stirring her cup of tea nervously. "But lately, I feel like he's testing boundaries. I don't know how to explain it, but something feels off." Her friend listened carefully, nodding in understanding. "You're right to trust your instincts, Maria," she said gently. "It's better to be cautious now than to regret it later. Keep doing what you're doing, stay alert, stay firm, and make sure you're never alone when he's around." Maria felt a sense of relief at being heard. Talking about her feelings out loud helped her organize her thoughts and reminded her that she didn't have to face her concerns alone. Back at the ranch, Maria continued her daily tasks with renewed caution. She worked early in the mornings, before the sun was fully up, to avoid unexpected visitors. She kept her phone within reach at all times and made mental notes of any unusual behavior she observed. When Jake appeared at the barn or in the fields, she maintained her distance, responding politely but firmly to his offers of help. Each time, she repeated her boundaries clearly, ensuring that he understood she was serious. One morning, as she repaired a section of the fence near the creek, she noticed Jake approaching once again. This time, he carried a small toolbox and a friendly expression, walking casually as if their previous interactions had been ordinary neighborly exchanges. Maria straightened her posture and continued her work, deliberately keeping her back to him while nailing the fence posts. She spoke without turning around. "I've got this covered, Jake. Thank you, but I don't need help." Jake stopped a few feet away, setting down the toolbox. He hesitated for a moment, then said, "I just want to make sure you're safe, Maria. That's all. I've seen some of the work you're doing, and it can be hard for one person." Maria paused, holding the hammer midair. She appreciated the concern but couldn't ignore the way his tone seemed different now, almost testing her response, almost challenging her. She replied firmly, "I'm safe. I know what I'm doing. Please respect my space." For a moment, the two of them stood in silence. The wind rustled through the leaves, and the creek bubbled softly nearby. Maria could feel the tension in the air, a quiet but unmistakable pressure that made her pulse quicken. She finished repairing the fence without looking at Jake again, and when she stepped back to inspect her work, he had already moved a few paces away, nodding politely before walking toward the barn. Even though Jake's behavior had not escalated dramatically, Maria sensed that something was building. She couldn't pinpoint what it was, but the uneasy feeling in her chest was growing. That afternoon, she took extra precautions. She secured the barn doors, ensured all animals were fed, and double-checked that her tools were organized and within reach. She even considered asking a friend to join her during the next day's work, just for added safety. As days passed, Maria noticed subtle changes in the community as well. Some neighbors spoke more openly about Jake, mentioning how he could be persistent and confident, almost to the point of testing limits. "He means well, but he can be overbearing sometimes," one neighbor said casually while she passed by on the road. Maria nodded silently, realizing that her instincts were not unfounded. She wasn't imagining the tension she felt. Others had noticed it too. Maria decided to take a more proactive approach. She began mapping out her daily routine, noting the times when she would be alone or performing tasks that required extra effort. She created small signals with her friends and family so that someone would be nearby if she needed assistance. Every precaution made her feel stronger, more prepared, and more in control of her environment. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned soft shades of orange and pink, Maria was in the barn feeding the animals. The gentle lowing of the cows and the rustling of hay created a familiar, comforting rhythm. Suddenly, she saw Jake approaching from the side door, carrying a water bucket. Her heart skipped a beat, but she remained calm. She set down the feed and took a step back, keeping a safe distance. "I just need to check the water supply," he said, his voice calm. Maria nodded, but her instincts urged her to stay alert. "Thank you, Jake. I'll take care of it myself," she replied, keeping her tone polite but firm. Jake paused, giving her a measured look before setting the bucket down at the corner of the barn. He didn't approach further, but the tension in the air remained. Maria realized that boundaries were being tested not just through words, but through subtle actions, and she needed to stay vigilant. That night, Maria sat by the window of her small room above the barn, looking out over the fields bathed in moonlight. The animals were quiet, and the ranch was calm, yet she couldn't shake the feeling of unease. She thought about the morning's warning, her friend's advice, and the small but important steps she had taken to protect herself. Each thought reinforced her determination to stay strong and alert. She knew that strength wasn't just physical, it was mental, emotional, and the courage to trust her instincts. Over the next few weeks, Maria noticed patterns in Jake's behavior. He appeared at different times, sometimes too early in the morning or late in the evening, always observing quietly. He didn't cross her boundaries directly, but his presence became a reminder that vigilance was necessary. Maria learned to balance caution with normalcy, maintaining her daily routine while remaining aware of her surroundings. She worked with quiet confidence, handling the animals, repairing fences, and managing the feed, all while keeping her instincts sharp. Maria also spent more time with friends and family in town, sharing updates and seeking advice when necessary. She found strength in their support, realizing that independence didn't mean facing challenges alone. Conversations with trusted people reminded her that her feelings were valid, that her instincts mattered, and that asserting boundaries was not just her right, but her responsibility. By the end of the second part of her story, Maria had grown stronger in many ways. She had learned to recognize subtle signs of discomfort, to assert her boundaries clearly, and to seek support when needed. The ranch, once just a place of routine and labor, had become a place of personal growth and awareness. Each day, she practiced vigilance, independence, and confidence, preparing herself for whatever might come next. Though the days were filled with work and routine, there was a quiet tension underneath, a growing sense that the situation with Jake could change at any moment. Maria remained calm, focused, and prepared, knowing that her strength, awareness, and determination would guide her through whatever challenges the future might bring. And so, life on the ranch continued, peaceful in appearance, yet layered with awareness, lessons, and the quiet power of a woman who refused to ignore her instincts. Maria had learned that true strength often comes from patience, observation, and the courage to stand firm, even when the world around her seems calm and ordinary. White heavy checkmark word count. Word the days on the ranch had grown longer and busier for Maria, but a quiet unease lingered at the back of her mind. Every morning, as the sun spilled golden light across the fields, she reminded herself to stay alert. The ranch, with its open spaces, animals, and familiar barns, seemed peaceful to anyone passing by, yet Maria knew better. She had sensed the tension in Jake's behavior for weeks, and though he hadn't crossed the line yet, she understood that small actions could escalate if left unchecked. One evening, as the sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the sky with shades of pink and orange. Maria finished feeding the animals and began organizing the barn. The work was physically demanding, but the rhythm of lifting hay, refilling water troughs, and stacking feed sacks gave her a sense of focus. Her mind, however, remained alert. The soft creak of the barn doors, the gentle shuffle of hooves, and the rustling of straw were familiar sounds, yet each noise now made her pause and glance around. It was then that she noticed Jake approaching through the barn's side door. He carried a water bucket and a calm expression, as if he belonged there. Maria stiffened. Her instincts immediately went on high alert. She had warned him before, made her boundaries clear, and had kept a careful distance for weeks. But now the feeling in her chest was one she couldn't ignore. Something was different about the way he moved, deliberate, almost testing the limits. Maria spoke first, her voice firm yet controlled. "I can take care of the water, Jake." "Thank you, but it's fine." She positioned herself so there was plenty of space between them, holding her posture confidently. Jake paused for a moment, glancing around the barn, then nodded slowly. "I just want to make sure everything is okay. This barn can get busy, and I thought I could help." His tone was calm, almost casual, but Maria noticed the way he lingered near the corner where the buckets were stacked. She felt a ripple of tension run through her. This was the moment she had been mentally preparing for, not because she expected it, but because she had learned that caution was necessary. Maria's mind raced as she considered her options. She could continue her work and ignore him, but she also needed to assert herself immediately. With steady hands, she lifted the water bucket, maintaining a safe distance. "I said it's fine, Jake. Please respect my space." Her words were calm, yet they carried a weight of authority she hoped he could recognize. Jake's response was subtle. He took a step closer, still smiling, and reached toward the water bucket. Maria's eyes narrowed. She had warned him clearly in the past. "Don't move your hand, don't take advantage." She remembered the firmness in her own voice when she first said it, and now, faced with this situation, she felt that same inner strength rise up. She placed the bucket down on the opposite side of the barn, carefully positioning herself so she could move quickly if needed. For a brief moment, the barn was silent except for the soft sounds of the animals. Maria could feel her pulse quicken, but she forced herself to breathe evenly. She reminded herself that confidence and clarity were her best tools. Her hands were steady, her posture strong, and her gaze direct. She had practiced this moment in her mind countless times, preparing for the possibility that Jake might test her boundaries further. Then, unexpectedly, Jake acted. He reached out quickly, trying to touch her hand as if to guide the bucket. The motion was sudden, but Maria reacted immediately. She stepped back, pulling her hand away and holding it close to her chest. "No," she said firmly, her voice echoing slightly in the barn. Her words were more than a warning now, they were a declaration. She stood tall, her shoulders squared, ready to defend herself if necessary. Jake froze for a moment, perhaps realizing that his actions had crossed the line. Maria's eyes locked onto his, unwavering and serious. "I told you before," she said, her voice steady, "do not cross my boundaries. I will not tolerate it." Her tone left no room for misinterpretation. She was calm, but the firmness in her words conveyed the seriousness of the situation. The barn was quiet again, save for the soft breathing of the animals and the distant rustle of leaves outside. Jake slowly stepped back, his expression unreadable, yet Maria could feel a shift in the energy around them. The tension that had been building over weeks reached a peak in that single moment. Maria's heart was still racing, but she felt a surge of empowerment as well. She had stood her ground and asserted herself with clarity and courage. After a moment, Jake nodded and moved toward the barn door. "I understand," he said softly. Maria didn't respond immediately, choosing instead to observe him leave. She wanted to be certain that he wouldn't linger or attempt another approach. Once the door closed behind him, she exhaled slowly, releasing the tightness that had built in her chest. Maria took a moment to steady herself. She leaned against the wooden post of the barn, feeling the rough texture beneath her hands, grounding herself in reality. The barn, which had moments ago felt tense and uncertain, now seemed like a safe space again. She reminded herself of the lessons she had learned over the past weeks. Trust her instincts, maintain boundaries, and seek support when necessary. That night, Maria couldn't sleep easily. She lay in bed above the barn, listening to the soft sounds of the night, the distant call of an owl, the gentle rustling of leaves, and the quiet breathing of the animals in their stalls. Her mind replayed the events of the evening, analyzing every movement, every word. She knew she had handled the situation well, but the experience reinforced her understanding that vigilance was an ongoing practice. The next morning, Maria began her chores with renewed focus. She fed the animals, cleaned the stalls, and organized the feed with precision. Every movement was deliberate, and every glance was aware. She noticed details she hadn't before. The way the sunlight fell across the hay stacks, the shadows in the corners of the barn, and the sound of distant footsteps on the gravel paths. Awareness had become a natural part of her routine, and it gave her confidence in navigating the space safely. Maria also reached out to her family and friends in town, updating them on the previous evening's incident. Their support was immediate and comforting. "You did exactly what you should have done," one friend said. "Standing your ground is the strongest thing you can do. You didn't overreact. You protected yourself." Hearing these words reinforced Maria's sense of empowerment. She realized that courage was not just about facing others. It was also about trusting herself and acknowledging her own strength. Over the next few days, Maria adjusted her routines further. She worked in pairs when possible, kept her phone nearby at all times, and avoided isolated spaces if Jake was around. Each precaution added to her confidence, allowing her to continue her work without fear. She discovered that preparation and awareness were as important as strength, and that being proactive could prevent unwanted situations from escalating. By the end of this period, Maria had grown stronger not only physically from her daily ranch work, but emotionally as well. She had faced a direct challenge, responded with courage, and maintained her dignity. The barn, once just a place of labor, had become a place of empowerment, a space where she had learned to assert herself, trust her instincts, and stand firm. Though the experience with Jake had been unsettling, Maria refused to let it define her days. She continued her life on the ranch with determination and focus, aware of the lessons she had learned. Every feed sack she lifted, every animal she cared for, and every fence she repaired became a reminder of her resilience and strength. And so, the story of that evening became a turning point for Maria. She had faced a moment of fear and uncertainty and emerged stronger, more confident, and more aware. The ranch, with its rolling fields, barns, and animals, was not just a place of work. It was a classroom for courage, vigilance, and self-respect. Maria had proven to herself that boundaries mattered, that instincts should never be ignored, and that true strength was a combination of awareness, preparation, and the courage to stand firm. The morning after the barn incident, Maria woke with a sense of cautious determination. The sun was barely peeking over the hills, casting a soft light across the ranch, but she felt the weight of what had happened the night before. While the situation had not escalated beyond a tense encounter, she knew it had been a turning point. Her awareness had sharpened, and her respect for her own instincts had deepened. As she stepped out of her small room above the barn, she could see the field stretching endlessly in front of her, golden in the morning light. Yet she was keenly aware that even in this familiar space, vigilance was necessary. She began her morning chores with meticulous care. The horses were fed and watered, the cows checked for any signs of discomfort, and the chickens were given their grain. As she moved through her work, she felt a quiet sense of pride in her independence. She had learned to navigate the ranch on her own terms, balancing hard work with awareness, strength, and caution. Each step, each action, was deliberate and purposeful, a reflection of the lessons she had internalized over the past weeks. Despite the calm routine, Maria knew that the incident with Jake could not be ignored. It had shaken the equilibrium she had carefully maintained, reminding her that boundaries must always be respected. She made the decision to report the encounter to local authorities, not as a gesture of punishment, but as a way to ensure that her voice was heard and that appropriate measures were in place to prevent any future incidents. Sitting in the small office at the town hall, Maria recounted the events clearly and calmly, detailing Jake's behavior and her own response. The officials listened attentively, asking questions to ensure they understood the context. "Thank you for sharing this," one officer said. "It's important to have these matters on record. You acted responsibly and clearly stated your boundaries. We'll take appropriate steps to ensure your safety." Hearing these words, Maria felt a mix of relief and reassurance. She realized that taking action did not make her weak, it made her strong. Speaking up was not just about herself, but about setting a precedent that boundaries must be honored in every interaction. Returning to the ranch that afternoon, Maria felt a renewed sense of focus. She resumed her chores with careful attention, ensuring that the barn doors were secured and the animals were comfortable. She also took the time to inspect her surroundings, noting potential blind spots and areas where she might need additional support in the future. This proactive approach gave her a sense of control, reinforcing the idea that preparedness and awareness were essential components of independence. Over the next few days, the ranch began to feel familiar once again, though Maria remained vigilant. She continued her routine, but she also implemented additional precautions. She arranged for a trusted friend to check in periodically, set up clear signals for assistance if needed, and kept her phone close at all times. These measures were not born of fear, they were acts of empowerment. By taking responsibility for her safety, Maria demonstrated courage, foresight, and self-respect. Neighbors and friends in town began to notice her resilience. Some approached her to express support, acknowledging the difficult situation she had faced and praising her ability to navigate it with poise. "You handled yourself with strength and clarity," one friend remarked. "It's inspiring to see someone stand firm and take care of themselves." Maria appreciated the encouragement, understanding that her actions were not only protecting her own well-being, but also serving as a model for others in the community. As the days turned into weeks, Maria gradually regained a sense of normalcy. The ranch once again became a place of routine, productivity, and quiet satisfaction. She tended to her animals, repaired fences, and organized the feed with precision, all while maintaining the vigilance that had become second nature. Each task, from the simplest to the most demanding, was performed with confidence and care. The barn, which had been the site of tension, now felt like a space of empowerment, an arena where Maria had learned to assert herself and enforce her boundaries. Despite the challenges, Maria remained positive and forward-looking. She recognized that life on the ranch, like life itself, required balance, a combination of hard work, awareness, and the courage to face challenges head-on. She continued to nurture her relationships with neighbors and friends, valuing their support and advice while maintaining her independence. This balance of connection and self-reliance strengthened her, allowing her to navigate daily life with confidence. One afternoon, while inspecting the fence line near the creek, Maria reflected on the lessons she had learned. The encounter with Jake had been unsettling, but it had also been a catalyst for growth. She realized that strength was not only measured by physical ability, but also by the clarity to recognize boundaries, the courage to enforce them, and the wisdom to seek support when necessary. This understanding gave her a deeper appreciation for her own resilience and for the supportive community around her. Maria also took the opportunity to educate herself further on personal safety and awareness. She read books on assertiveness, boundary setting, and effective communication, incorporating practical strategies into her daily life. She shared some of these insights with close friends, fostering conversations about respect, consent, and empowerment. These discussions reinforced the importance of vigilance, preparation, and mutual respect in all interactions, both on the ranch and in the wider community. As the ranch settled into its rhythm, Maria noticed that Jake's behavior had changed. He appeared less frequently and maintained a respectful distance when he did. It seemed that the combination of clear boundaries, her assertive response, and the involvement of authorities had created a shift. Maria felt a sense of relief, but she also understood that ongoing vigilance was necessary. Life on the ranch was unpredictable, and maintaining awareness was an ongoing practice. Even as she regained her sense of security, Maria continued to strengthen her daily routines. She organized her tasks efficiently, ensuring that she was never isolated when performing potentially challenging work. She also cultivated moments of reflection and mindfulness, taking time to appreciate the beauty of the ranch, the animals, and the quiet strength she had developed. These moments of calm provided balance, reminding her that resilience was built not only through vigilance, but also through gratitude and self-care. By the end of this period, Maria had fully embraced her role as both caretaker and protector of the ranch. She managed her responsibilities with skill, confidence, and foresight, demonstrating the strength that came from combining physical effort with mental and emotional preparedness. The barn, the fields, and the animals had all become symbols of her resilience, a daily reminder that challenges could be met with courage and clarity. Maria also recognized the broader impact of her experience. By asserting her boundaries, reporting the incident, and taking proactive measures, she had set an example for others in the community. Her actions showed that it was possible to respond to difficult situations with dignity, strength, and responsibility. She hoped that her story would encourage others to trust their instincts, speak up when necessary, and take control of their own safety without fear or hesitation. As the sun set over the ranch one evening, casting long shadows across the fields, Maria paused to watch the animals grazing peacefully. The day had been productive, her tasks completed efficiently, and her surroundings secure. She felt a deep sense of accomplishment, not only for the work she had done, but for the personal growth she had achieved. The events of the past weeks had tested her, challenged her, and ultimately strengthened her in ways she had not anticipated. The ranch, once a simple place of labor and routine, had become a space of empowerment, reflection, and growth. Maria understood that challenges would continue to arise, as they always do in life, but she felt prepared to face them with confidence. She had learned to combine strength with awareness, independence with support, and determination with reflection. These lessons, forged in the quiet moments of the ranch and through the tension she had faced, would remain with her always. By the time night fully settled over the ranch, Maria had finished her day with a sense of peace. The animals were safe, the barns secure, and the fields calm under the soft light of the moon. She stood for a moment in the cool night air, feeling the gentle breeze on her face and listening to the quiet sounds of the ranch. In that moment, she realized that she had not only survived a challenging situation, but had also grown stronger, wiser, and more confident in her ability to navigate life on her own terms. The days and weeks that followed brought a sense of renewal and quiet strength to Maria's life on the ranch. The tension that had lingered after the incident with Jake slowly faded, replaced by a feeling of control and resilience. Every morning, she awoke with purpose, ready to tend to the animals, repair fences, and manage the many responsibilities of ranch life. Each task, once just a routine, had become an opportunity to practice independence, vigilance, and confidence. Maria's strength was no longer measured only by her ability to lift hay sacks or repair fences. It was also reflected in her courage, her clarity, and her unwavering commitment to her own safety. She continued to work carefully and methodically, aware that the lessons of the past weeks had changed her forever. The animals responded to her steady presence, and the field seemed to hum with a quiet energy. Maria moved through the ranch with intention, noticing small details that others might overlook. The way the sunlight shifted across the pastures, the gentle sounds of the river, or the patterns of the wind through the trees. These observations were not just about the land. They were reminders of the awareness and patience she had cultivated within herself. Over time, Maria's confidence inspired others around her. Friends and neighbors who had witnessed the challenges she faced often sought her advice or checked in to offer support. Many admired the way she had handled the situation with dignity, never allowing fear to dominate her actions. "You are an example for all of us," one neighbor said warmly as she passed by on the road. "You faced a difficult situation with courage, and you've shown us all what strength looks like." Maria appreciated the words but knew that her growth was more than recognition. It was a personal journey of self-respect, resilience, and awareness. Maria also took steps to ensure her long-term safety and preparedness. She reviewed the ranch for potential risks, added small improvements to barns and fences, and continued working with trusted friends to maintain regular check-ins. She also began teaching others in the community about awareness, boundaries, and vigilance. These conversations were not lectures but shared experiences, encouraging others to respect themselves and their surroundings. In doing so, Maria found purpose beyond her own life. She became a mentor, quietly guiding others to develop confidence and safety in their daily routines. One bright morning, Maria noticed the first signs of true peace returning to her daily life. Jake, who had once caused her tension, seemed to have adjusted his behavior entirely. He maintained distance, offering help only when explicitly requested and showing respect for her boundaries at every turn. Maria observed this calmly, knowing that her assertive actions, combined with her reporting to the authorities, had created this necessary change. The balance she had worked to restore was finally taking hold, and the ranch felt like a safe, predictable environment once more. Despite this improvement, Maria remained vigilant. She understood that safety was not a one-time achievement. It was a continuous practice. She kept her routines consistent, monitored the environment carefully, and reinforced her awareness in both small and significant ways. Whether checking the water troughs, feeding the animals, or organizing tools, she remained alert and deliberate. This combination of preparation and confidence allowed her to move through her daily life without fear, transforming what had once been a source of tension into an opportunity for empowerment. Maria's days were full of both hard work and reflection. Each evening, after completing her chores, she would take a moment to watch the sun dip below the horizon, painting the fields in soft hues of pink, orange, and gold. She would listen to the gentle sounds of the ranch, the rustling of leaves, the lowing of the cows, and the distant calls of birds. In these moments, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. The ranch was more than just a place to work. It was a space where she had learned courage, patience, and the value of standing firm in her principles. As the seasons changed, Maria's connection to the ranch deepened. She had witnessed growth and renewal in the land around her, and she saw the same growth within herself. The challenges she had faced were not erased, but they had become part of her story, shaping her into someone stronger, more aware, and more capable. The independence she cultivated was balanced by the understanding that seeking support and guidance was not weakness, but a wise and empowering choice. Maria also embraced opportunities to share her story more broadly. She spoke with community groups, participated in local gatherings, and offered advice to younger residents about respecting themselves and their boundaries. Her experiences became a source of inspiration, illustrating the importance of awareness, courage, and communication. She encouraged others to trust their instincts, to speak up when something felt wrong, and to take proactive steps in creating safe environments for themselves. One afternoon, while working in the barn, Maria paused to reflect on how far she had come. The memory of that tense evening with Jake remained clear, but it no longer brought fear or anxiety. Instead, it served as a reminder of her strength and resilience. She realized that the true measure of her courage was not simply in standing firm at that moment, but in the ongoing commitment to live each day with confidence, awareness, and self-respect. Maria also found joy in the simple pleasures of ranch life. She watched the horses graze in the pastures, noting their movements with appreciation. She cared for the garden, tending vegetables and flowers with patience. Even the smallest tasks became moments of reflection and growth. Through these routines, Maria discovered that true empowerment came not only from responding to challenges, but also from embracing life fully, appreciating its beauty, and finding balance between work and mindfulness. By the time the sun set, painting the ranch in shades of deep orange and soft purple, Maria had completed her day's work with a sense of satisfaction and accomplishment. The animals were cared for, the barns were secure, and the fields were orderly. Most importantly, Maria felt an inner peace she had not experienced in weeks. She had confronted challenges, asserted her boundaries, sought support when necessary, and emerged stronger on the other side. Her journey was a testament to resilience, courage, and the power of self-awareness. In the quiet of the evening, Maria stood in the field, watching the moon rise over the hills. The wind carried the soft scent of grass and earth, and the gentle sounds of the ranch created a comforting rhythm. She knew that life would continue to bring challenges, as it always does, but she felt prepared. She had learned to navigate difficulties with clarity, to act decisively, and to maintain her independence without compromising safety or self-respect. The ranch had become more than just a home. It was a sanctuary where strength, awareness, and confidence were cultivated daily. Maria's story spread through the community, not as gossip or fear, but as an example of courage and empowerment. People admired her for facing difficult circumstances, standing firm, and taking proactive steps to ensure her safety. Her actions encouraged others to reflect on their own boundaries, to trust their instincts, and to understand the importance of speaking up when something felt wrong. Maria had transformed a moment of tension into a lasting lesson for herself and for those around her. As weeks turned into months, Maria continued to thrive on the ranch. Her routines were steady, her vigilance natural, and her confidence unwavering. Each day brought new opportunities to apply the lessons she had learned, to balance hard work with mindfulness, independence with support, and awareness with reflection. The challenges she had faced were no longer sources of fear, but reminders of the strength she carried within herself. The ranch, bathed in the soft glow of sunrise and sunset, stood as a testament to Maria's journey. Every field, barn, and animal reflected her care, diligence, and resilience. She had faced difficult situations, asserted her boundaries, and embraced both her independence and her responsibility to herself. Her growth was visible not just in her actions, but in her demeanor, her confidence, and her unwavering calm in the face of uncertainty. And so, Maria's life on the ranch became a story of empowerment, courage, and self-respect. She had learned that true strength was not only in physical ability or routine work, but in the courage to stand firm, the awareness to recognize danger, and the wisdom to seek support when necessary. Every day, she applied these lessons, creating a life filled with balance, confidence, and peace. As the final light of the day faded and the stars began to sparkle in the night sky, Maria stood quietly in the field, watching over the animals and the land she loved. She breathed deeply, feeling the cool night air fill her lungs, and reflected on her journey. She had faced fear, uncertainty, and challenges, yet she had emerged stronger, wiser, and more confident than ever before. The ranch, the animals, and the fields were not just part of her home. They were symbols of her resilience, courage, and unwavering self-respect.